This is the audiobook version of a Christmas special. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Chapter 1. Mariana. The world is a dark place. In my many years on this planet, I have experienced grief far more tragic than anyone could imagine. Yet, I continue to try and see the beauty in the world, because if I didn't, I would have not lasted as long as I have. In my long life, I've learned that finding beauty in the smallest things can be the most rewarding, like the dew on flower petals, the chirping of crickets, or one of my favorites, snow. It is one of the only things that always brings a smile to my face. When the world was crushing me in its tight grasp, I had snow and rain and the beauty of midnight storms to make me smile. Sometimes it was all I had. I awoke from my slumber, getting ready to head over to Kevin's office. After our last case, where I lost Angela, I had been avoiding him. I knew he just wanted things to go back to normal, and I was really going to try. As I was sliding on my coat, that I didn't really need, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. I turned towards the balcony, my face lighting up at the sight of snow glimmering under the pale moonlight. I watched the flakes of snow hit the glass, an idea coming to mind. I knew Kevin was waiting for me, but I was too excited. I rushed out of the door, almost forgetting to lock it behind me. I made my way to the main floor, quickening my pace with each step. I knew Kevin would wonder where I had gone, but I needed this. I truly did. I waved at another tenant who glanced in my direction and then looked back down at his phone, not even cracking a smile. I ignored his unamused look and approached the main floor, grasping the handle tightly with my fingers. With a quick pull, I stepped through onto the sidewalk. From the looks of it, it had been snowing all afternoon, leaving the outside world a wonderland of white. I had seen it snow thousands of times, and yet the beauty of it never waned. The streetlights sparkled off the snow as it fluttered down from the navy blue sky. I caught one in my hand, watching the beauty of its design before it melted on my bare skin. I could no longer feel its cold touch, only the mere sensation. I noticed the snow had collected heavily on the grass nearby. I walked across the street to a small park that was empty at this time of night. The dim light of the moon tried to break through the clouds, but the snow kept it muffled just as it did with sound, making everything seem silenced. I took a breath of fresh air, falling backward into the snow, a cloud flying upward at the weight of my body. When my body hit the snow, I thought back to the last time I had laid in the snow like this. Angela and I were on a date, and the two of us ran into the snow to make angels. I smiled at the memory, swinging my arms and legs to create a snow angel just like we once did. That was the last time I truly enjoyed the snow. Angela had enjoyed the snow just as much as I did, and would have loved to lie here for hours with me, not saying a word. I felt a tear roll down my cheek as I quickly brushed it away before it could freeze, like the last snow angels we made together. I had to focus on the happy feelings instead of letting the sad ones consume me. When my snow angel was finished, I laid there and just stared up at the sky. Clouds covered every inch, but my vampiric vision allowed me to see through them, to see the brightly lit stars behind it. As I scanned the sky, a shooting star flew past. I closed my eyes, making a silent wish. I stayed in that position and enjoyed the silence around me. The noise of life could be deafening, but for a little while it all went away as if put on mute. I laid there for quite some time when the silence was disturbed by the crunch of snow. I opened my eyes to find feet beside my head, and when I looked, I saw a bundled-up Kevin staring down at me. Kevin raised a brow in question. "What are you doing out here?" "Watching the snow fall," I muttered, moving my gaze from him back towards the sky. "How is watching the snowfall interesting?" Kevin asked. "Snow is beautiful, and stunning, and cold, and glorious. Every time it snows, I smile at the beauty of it," I said, a snowflake landing on my cheek. "I thought by now you would be sick of the snow," Kevin questioned. I quickly jumped to my feet, shaking the snow from my hair like a dog does when it enters the house. Kevin cringed back with a laugh as the snow hit me in the face. "How could I ever tire of something so beautiful?" I said, meeting his gaze with a smile. I began walking off down the road towards Kevin's building as he scrambled after me. Of course, with his human speed, he had no chance, but I tried to slow down so I wouldn't leave him down the block. "I thought after 1,600 years you would be bored with such trivial things," Kevin said, shoving his hands into his pockets. I shook my head. "I'm 1,681 to be precise, and no, just listen for a moment. What do you hear?" We stopped walking as Kevin closed his eyes. He listened intently, his face scrunched in concentration. I noticed this look and smiled just as he reopened his eyes to meet mine. "I don't hear anything," Kevin admitted. "Exactly," I said, causing more confusion to appear on his face. The snow acts as a barrier to the sound. There is no silence like that of snow. The sounds of the world are muted. It's peaceful. I began to walk again as Kevin did his best to keep up with my stride, while trying to keep the conversation going. "Did you ever experience snow when you were alive?" I finished, Kevin slowly nodding in response. "No. We had rainy winters rather than something as beautiful as this. I didn't see snow for the first time until I was a vampire for nearly 100 years. You should have seen the excitement and wonder in my eyes. I think I even cried." "You cried over snow?" Kevin questioned with surprise. "I cried over its beauty. I had never seen anything so pure than in that moment. I had been alone for so long with the noises of the world crashing in on me, laying there and having everything, but the snowflakes, disappear. It was like nothing else," I explained with a smile. I glanced over to Kevin and noticed he was beginning to enjoy the silence just as much as I did. Without looking at one another, Kevin spoke. "Have you ever celebrated Christmas?" "Yes. When I was human, we had this week-long festival called Saturnalia in December." I smiled in reminiscence. "And in my many years, my friends have invited me to their festivities, but it's been quite a long time since then." "Since Angela?" he asked, peering over at me. I nodded. "Yeah, she was the last person who wanted to spend Christmas with me, and so it's been quite a while since I enjoyed the holiday." We arrived at the front steps of his office building, when out of the corner of my eye I saw Kevin's face light up. I knew that meant he had had an idea. Whether it was a good one or a bad one, I couldn't tell. He moved down off the steps and onto the sidewalk. I turned back towards him with a confused look. "What are you doing? Aren't we going in to discuss the next case?" I asked with a raised brow. "That can wait. I have a better idea of how we can spend our time," Kevin said, smiling from ear to ear. I went silent as if I was supposed to know what he meant. So I shrugged. "And that would be?" "Right. Just take my hand," Kevin said, offering his hand to me. "Why?" I asked. "Just trust me." I looked down at his outstretched hand and placed mine in his. I could tell he shivered at my cold touch, but he was getting better at hiding his reaction, so I would feel better, and that meant more than he could ever know. Kevin began pulling me towards the parking garage without explaining a thing. I allowed him to pull me to the car before I demanded answers. I easily pulled my hand from his, causing him to look back at me. "Where are we going?" I asked with curiosity. "I'm going to give you a proper Christmas," Kevin smiled. "I've celebrated Christmas many times before," I laughed. "Proper and improper of the like." He smiled wide. "Maybe so, but you haven't celebrated with me." Kevin grabbed my hand once again and pulled me quickly to the car. I rolled my eyes as I got into the passenger seat and he got into the driver's. With a quick switch, the engine came to life. Kevin put the car into drive and we headed towards the entrance. As we were turning, the car slid quite close to hitting another car. Of course, I would be fine if we crashed. Kevin may seriously injure himself, or the car, as it was his baby, and losing it would be a great tragedy. After regaining control, Kevin drove down the dimly lit road. I asked where we were going, but every time I asked, he would respond with the same 2 words. "You'll see." After an hour of sitting in pure silence, I could no longer sit idle. Kevin was focused on the road, but I still had no idea where we were going, and at this point, I was curious if he knew. "Do you even know where you're taking me?" I asked with crossed arms. "Yes, of course, I do," Kevin said, uncertainty in his voice. "We're lost, aren't we?" I asked, laughing beneath my breath. "No, we're not," Kevin said as his face lit up. "We've just arrived." I looked where he was looking and found a ginormous store, the type of store that had sold anything your heart desired. Kevin pulled into the lot, which was dead at this time of night. Kevin parked and we got out at the same moment. He led the way to the main doors as I realized I had not seen the store when driving on the road in front of it until Kevin said something. That thought was odd, but I pushed it out of my mind because Kevin was excited, and I wasn't going to ruin it with my worry. Just before we got to the door, he grabbed my hand and pulled me through. The store was way bigger on the inside than it looked on the outside, with aisles going on for what felt like infinity. We noticed a sign for the Christmas section, and we were off. Kevin grabbed a cart from a collection of them near the front of the store. The creaky wheels squeaked as it rolled over the laminated tile floor. We stopped at the edge of the aisle with jaws dropped. Trees, wreaths, and decor of any caliber lined the shelves to the point of overflowing. "I'll get the tree and wreath. You get some lights and ornaments. We'll meet back here in 10 minutes, Kevin said, meeting my gaze of wonder. "All right, see you soon." I squeezed his hand before running down the row. Near the very end, I saw thousands of different colors and styles of string lights. I chose a set of multicolor lights as I made my way to the ornaments. I noticed some cute stars, cartoon characters, and glass balls. Instead of choosing one or two, I grabbed all of them and put them in a basket I found nearby. I continued to look for ornaments until I heard glass shatter. I quickly turned around to find a disheveled old woman standing near the end of the aisle, a broken ornament at her feet. Her eyes met mine with excitement as she ran towards me, forcefully grabbing at my arm. "What day is it?" she muttered through her continuous sobbing. It's December 20th, I said, grabbing her hand and slowly removing it from my arm with awkwardness. The color drained from her face as she sighed heavily. There was shock in her eyes. I could not even begin to describe. "It can't be. No. I didn't think it had been that long," she muttered beneath her breath. Curiosity got the better of me. "How long have you been here?" "A month," she admitted. "A month?" I questioned with confusion. "Why haven't you left?" "The store won't let me," she sighed. "What do you mean the store won't let you?" I asked. I set the basket of ornaments on the floor as I approached the woman. I placed my hands on her crossed arms, her puffy red eyes meeting mine. "It changes. I go in one aisle and wind up across the store. I've continually tried to get to the door, but nothing I do gets me any closer," she explained with a sigh. "A store does not have the power to change," I said, with a shaking head. The woman's eyes went wide. "Don't say that. It'll hear you." "It's a damn store. It can't hear me," I replied. As if in response to my disbelief, a weird feeling came over me, like nausea but not quite. Then I felt hands on the back of my shirt push me forward. I turned around, confused as all hell. The woman, on the other hand, looked like she was going to cry again. "I told you," she muttered. I shook my head, still thinking she was crazy. That was until I noticed my basket was gone, and we were no longer in the Christmas aisle. We were surrounded by pet products, this aisle being on the exact opposite side of the store. "What the?" I muttered, looking around with shock and confusion. "You shouldn't have come here," the woman said, getting to her feet. "Now that it has you, I'll never let you go." I stood there, looking around with worry and confusion, with one name coming to mind. Chapter 2. Kevin. I found the perfect Christmas tree, tall in stature, with bristles as green as Mariana's sparkling eyes. I set it down within the cart and went looking for a wreath, peeking down the aisle to find Mariana excitingly placing ornaments in her basket. I noticed an older woman standing beside her, most likely helping her make a decision. I smiled to myself as I looked at the selection of wreaths. Different designs and colors lined the shelves as I found one with little snowflakes hanging from the center, hopefully reminding Mariana of the snowfall outside. I set the wreath within my basket, looking down the aisle to find Mariana and the older woman were now gone. My first thought was that they may have walked into another aisle, but that pit in my stomach said otherwise. I left my cart by the wreaths to make my way down the row. As I approached, I found Mariana's basket filled to the brim with different types of Christmas items, but no sight of her. I stepped forward and heard the crunch of glass beneath my foot, looking down to find a broken ornament. I crouched down to examine the glass as I felt hands grasp my shoulders. Then, a slight push as I was thrown onto the ground. I quickly got up to yell at the person who decided to knock me over, only to find no one was there. What made matters weirder is I was now in the cereal section rather than the Christmas one. I pretended that maybe I fell into this aisle and wandered back towards where I thought the Christmas aisle was. As I got near, I looked back for only a second, and when I turned back, I was surrounded by plants at the back of the store. "What the hell?" I muttered beneath my breath. I tried to walk forwards again, but then I just wound up in the toy section. I did this several more times, always ending up in a different spot. Each time I was more tired than the last, running out of breath and energy, which made no sense as I was in good shape and walking was like nothing. I tried one last time, and as I began to walk, I felt the sensation of a hand grabbing my shoulder. This time, when I peered behind me, I found a man I did not recognize clinging to my shirt. "Who are you?" I asked. "The man who's saving your life," he muttered in return. I turned around to face him as I found we were in the storage room, surrounded by boxes. I pushed the man away as I wanted answers. "Who the hell are you, and what the hell just happened?" The man shrugged. "The name's Connor, and as I said, I saved your life." He began to walk away from me, but I wasn't finished. I quickly approached, grabbing his shoulder so he would look back at me. "Saved from what?" I asked, confusion consuming every feature on my face. "Follow me, and you'll find out." Connor removed my hand, continuing to walk through the boxes. I wanted to turn back to find Mariana, but this man might be the key to finding out what the hell just happened. I caught up to his stride as Connor led the way to a door. This door led us to a security office with 3 others inside. A little girl, her mother, and her father were sitting in the corner, clinging to each other as if it were life or death. Connor approached the far wall, which was covered head to toe with computer screens. He began typing quickly with his fidgety fingers. I tried to speak, but his hand rose into the air to shush me. I sighed deeply with annoyance as he continued to type. When he clicked enter, the center screen went back to the moment where we were both in the furniture aisle. He used his raised hand to motion me forward. I moved beside him, Connor motioning with his head for me to watch. I silently agreed as he pushed play. The security footage showed Connor grabbing my shoulders. I leaned forward and watched something unbelievable occur. One moment we were there, and the next we were gone, as if we were blinked out of existence. Connor pushed pause as I voiced my confusion. "What the hell did I just see?" "That was the store teleporting us," Connor explained. "Luckily, I've learned its tricks. If I hadn't grabbed you, you could have ended up anywhere, and continued to lose energy and eventually die." "What do you mean lose energy and die?" I asked with a raised brow. Connor sighed. "Each time the store moves you, it takes some of your life essence. If you hadn't noticed, each time you moved, you grew more weak and tired. If I had left you, you most likely would have died. The store would have drained you to nothing." "Are you saying the store's alive?" I asked. At first, that's what I thought, but then I noticed something. "Watch closely," Connor ordered. He rewound the tape and slowed it down to a mere crawl. I leaned in close and watched as we slowly faded out of frame. For only a split second, a figure appeared beside us. When we vanished, so did it. "What was that?" I asked. "That is what is keeping all of us in the store. Just by teleporting you, it can drain life energy. But back here, it cannot reach us. Iron lines the walls, keeping the thing out there," Connor explained with a sigh. "Why would iron keep it out?" I asked. "If I tell you, you can't freak out," Connor said. "Oh, don't you worry. I just saw something teleport me. I think I can handle whatever you are about to say," I said with crossed arms. "It's a Shtriga," Connor admitted. "I discovered this a short while after I arrived. I keep trying to kill the damn thing, but every time I get close, it vanishes. I've been trying to rescue this family for months, but I can't get to the door. It loves to play with its food." "What is a Shtriga?" I muttered. "It's an Albanian witch that feeds off the energy of children, but this one is desperate and has started to attack adults," Connor explained, catching my attention. "It has super strength and agility. It can shapeshift, drain life energy, and it's nearly impossible to kill." "Why is it trapping people in a store?" I asked. "I think this one has gotten crafty. It lures people into the store and traps them here, slowly feeding on their life force. I came here because a family member of theirs was concerned," Connor said, motioning to the family. "I found them at the point of death. Luckily, we teleported near this back room and I got them inside before she could get to us. The iron keeps her out and is our only safe haven." A bad feeling sunk in. What does she shapeshift into? "Anything that will allow her to get close to her victims. From what I saw, when I came in contact with her, she likes to take on the look of an old woman. A harmless old woman." "Why?" Connor asked as he saw how stiff my posture had gotten. "There was an old woman with my friend, Mariana, before she vanished," I explained. Connor understood exactly what I was asking for. He nodded and quickly typed on the keyboard. The camera rewound to show Mariana looking at the ornaments. Mariana was looking at the shelf when the camera glitched. Within the glitch, the old woman I saw appeared disheveled and broken. She ran to Mariana, grabbing at her arms. Then after a short conversation, the two vanished. The camera glitched again, and the old woman, for only a split second, had dark, hollow eyes. This feeling in the pit of my stomach told me that was bad, and the look on Connor's face helped seal that in. The old woman, Connor began, meeting my gaze, was the Shtriga. Are you sure? I asked. Yes. Her kind have dark, hollow eyes, Connor said quickly. But why her? She has come for us many a time, but never so soon after arrival. She usually weakens her prey before she feeds directly upon them. Why would she take Mariana so soon? I looked at the family in the corner and back to Connor. I knew saying what I was about to say may put Mariana in danger, but it also may save her life. I sighed deeply. Mariana's a vampire. Connor stiffened as the family sitting in the corner just looked more worried. I knew they all believed me, but Connor's reaction is what made me nervous. If she has your vampire friend, she'll never escape. This creature feeds on energy, and as long as Mariana is kept alive, she is a constant source. She wouldn't have to trap anyone else in this nightmare, Connor explained. Does that mean we could escape? The little girl asked. Connor's eyes met mine before turning his attention to the girl. Yes, that means we should be able to escape. She won't want us anymore. I thought vampires didn't have souls, I exclaimed. Yes and no. Vampires have souls, but they're tainted. They may be black and shriveled, but it's still there. Every creature has one, even the most deadly, Connor sighed, meeting my gaze. Does Mariana care for humanity? Yes, I said with no hesitation. She has never liked killing humans. It makes her sick to her stomach. She drinks from blood bags because she loves life and wants to protect it. Then the Shtriga is going to enjoy her. Mariana has never truly given up on her humanity, which is when the soul becomes fully tainted. When it is too much tainted, the Shtriga will avoid it, as it is not enough of a meal. But Mariana's soul is different, Connor explained. Then let's go save her, I said, moving towards the door to notice none of them followed. Not even Connor. Connor shook his head with a sigh. Kevin, this may be our only shot. If we let her keep the vampire, we can escape. We'll be free. Letting someone innocent suffer is not the answer, I snapped. She's not innocent, Connor yelled, losing his patience. If she is a vampire, as you say, she has killed and killed many. She may have fought for humanity, but that doesn't mean she isn't a monster. She has just as much, if not more, blood on her hands than the Shtriga does. She is not a monster, I yelled back. I'm going to go save her, since your head's so far up your ass to do so. I began for the door when Connor yelled after me. You don't even know how to defeat a Shtriga. Then tell me what to do, I yelled, causing the family in the corner to jump. If you want to get these people to safety and run for the hills, fine, but I am saving my friend, my partner. Now, Mr. Hunter, tell me what I need to know. Going against a Shtriga of her age, especially if she has Mariana to feed on, is suicide, Connor said. And I am willing to risk it for my partner. How do I kill it? I said with no hesitation. Connor swore beneath his breath. You would need consecrated iron. Consecrated iron? I questioned. Yes. Consecrated iron. It's iron blessed by a priest. Anything else will only cause a mere flesh wound, Connor explained. Do you have consecrated iron? I asked. Of course I have consecrated iron, you dumbass, Connor snapped, pulling out a gun to show the rounds he had blessed. I came here to kill the damn thing. Why in the hell would I come here without something to kill her? Then help me, I pleaded, taking a step forward. You have the knowledge and the weapon. We can escort this family to the door and go for Mariana. If we win, you can say you took down a Shtriga. I'm guessing that ranks high when it comes to kills for hunters, right? I could see it in Connor's eyes that I was right. If he killed her, he could tell all his hunter friends of what he had done. His pride was winning over his brains, and he caved. Fine, but we get them out first, Connor demanded. Sounds like a plan. Connor got the family to stand up as we headed for the door. He handed me an iron rod in case the Shtriga made an appearance. It wouldn't kill her, but it would cause some major damage. We had to hope that with Mariana distracting her, we could get to the door before things got messy. Connor counted to 3 and we booked it for the door. Luckily, we were only about 50 feet from the doors, so we wasted no time. Connor yanked the doors open and the family ran through. The mother and her daughter booked it for the car as the man turned back to thank us. Once they were out of sight, we re-entered the main lobby. Connor pulled out a second gun, splitting the bullets between the 2 weapons. He handed me the gun as I placed it in my belt. Once weaponized, I began toward the aisles when Connor grabbed my arm. Chapter 3. Mariana. The second I realized she was right, I spent every moment I could spare trying to get back to the Christmas aisle. The woman did her best to keep pace with me so we wouldn't get separated, but every time we got close, we'd wind up somewhere entirely different. Sometimes all it took was turning around to find myself running into a shelf of a different aisle. At one point, I walked smack dab into a pole, which even with my heightened immunity, hurt like a bitch. I spent hours, or maybe longer, trying to get across the store. I wanted to fly across, but flying in front of the woman was not the smartest move, and I suspected the same teleportation trickery would continue to happen. I was getting fed up and pissed. Kevin just wanted to give me a nice Christmas, and this crap had to happen. My life could never be easy, could it? It's either vampires or demons or crappy humans ruining anything good that I possess. I was excited that Kevin wanted to celebrate Christmas with me, but now that might never happen. I continued to try until I noticed the woman was tired from all the running. So after a few more attempts, we stopped for a break in the soup aisle. She slid down against one of the shelving units and sat down on the floor. I reluctantly followed suit. I ran a hand through my hair with a loud sigh. All this teleporting was wearing me out. It surprised me how tired I had become, but honestly, I didn't care. I just wanted off this horrible roller coaster. The woman sighed just as loud as I did. I told you it was useless. I have to keep trying, I muttered in return. I laid my head against the shelf, staring up at the ceiling. I wondered what Kevin was doing right now. Knowing him, he was looking for me just as hard as I was looking for him. In the short time we had known each other, we grew close. Kevin knew of my darkness, but he treated me like I was normal. Like I was human. It was nice to have someone look at me as more than just a monster. I had seen my fair share of people leave due to my condition. They either ran away or tried to kill me. Yet Kevin did neither of those things. He was curious and caring, and I may never see him again. As if the woman read my mind, she nudged my shoulder. Is he your boyfriend? The man you keep trying to get back to? No. Just a friend. Well, partner. We work together, I said, and if I had the ability, I would have blushed. What do you both do? We're private investigators. Well, he is. I'm more of his assistant, I said, smiling to myself. I don't know if it was the look in my eyes or the smile on my lips, but the woman stared at me. I glanced towards her with a raised brow as she slightly laughed. You care about him as more than just a partner, don't you? She asked with a knowing smile. No, I do not, I denied, avoiding her gaze. Yes, you do. You wouldn't be fighting so hard to get back to him if that weren't the case, the woman prodded. I'm guessing he's just as shy as you are to admitting your feelings? I shook my head. Kevin and I enjoy each other's company is all. I don't get close to people anymore. I don't want to hurt them, the woman interrupted with understanding. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm scared to get close and fear I destroy them somehow. I don't want to be the reason someone loses their joy, but that's just what I do. I drain the life out of everything I touch. I know that feeling well, I sighed sadly. I'm just worried that I'll let myself feel something and I'll destroy him. I've made a lot of mistakes, and some I don't think I'll ever be able to make right. Does he know of your darkness? She asked, our eyes meeting. This Kevin of yours? I quickly nodded. Yeah. He's seen how monstrous I can be. Unlike many others, Kevin didn't run away when he found out. We actually grew closer. He wants to protect me, even though I can totally handle myself. He cares a lot more about me than someone has in a long time. Kevin sounds like a great guy. He is. He truly is. We smiled at one another as the woman's face saddened. My story must have brought something to her mind because I recognized the look in her eyes. Grief. I used to have someone like that as well, she said with a sad look in her eyes. His name was Arthur. He loved me for me and didn't care about the darkness within my soul. Was? I questioned. Arthur was wrongfully killed. These people were coming for me, but he wouldn't give me up. He died to save my life. He told me to run, but I should have stayed. I should have protected him, she said, tears coming to her eyes. I leaned forward and grabbed her hand. There's nothing you could have done. I know, it's just, I blame myself, she said, wiping the tears away. Don't let the heartbreak control your life, I said with a small smile. If you do, it can destroy you. I've learned that focusing on the grief of the past just makes things worse. quite good at giving advice," she said as we both softly laughed. "I may be good at giving advice, but I, myself, am terrible at following it," I shrugged. "You know, there was this quote I heard once that I find helps me," she said, clearing her throat. "It's from Winston Churchill. If you're going through hell, keep going. So, even if your troubles are crashing in on you, don't give up." "Wow, that's really good," I said as we both laughed again. "You're not bad at giving advice yourself." "Why, thank you," she said with a smile as she offered her hand to me. "My name's Agatha, and yours?" "Mariana." "Well, Mariana, I think we could be good friends." "I completely agree. We just need to get out of here first," I huffed, rising to my feet. "I don't think escape is possible," Agatha muttered, getting up just as I did. "If we can figure out the pattern, then we should be able to escape," I said, sounding optimistic when I felt anything but. I turned away from her as I heard Agatha speak barely above a whisper. "I don't think escape is possible for you." I shot back around with confusion. She met my gaze, but her eyes were no longer brown. Her once chocolate brown eyes were now black holes filled with emptiness staring back at me. I took a step backward as she stepped forward, her neck cracking with a deafening bang. Normally, even with her now hollow eyes, I wouldn't be afraid of some old woman, but something about her scared me. She gave off the feeling of death, and even I knew when to run. I used my speed to get away, but she somehow appeared in front of my path. Agatha smiled, her teeth as black as charcoal. She lunged forward, missing me by mere centimeters. With this chance, I ran as fast as my legs would carry me. I got halfway across the store when I wound up in the gardening section. I turned around to come face to face with Agatha. Her hand struck out and grabbed my throat, slamming my back into the shelving unit behind me. My back hit the metal, causing ceramic pots to crash onto the floor around us. She used her hand to lift me into the air, surprise smothering my features. I knew she wasn't human, but she was almost as strong as I was. She moved me away from the shelf and threw me onto the floor. I hit the tile and twisted around to find a ghost decoration hanging from the shelf above me. Agatha used her fist to try and punch me, but I moved my head just in time. I got up and flew into the air, but she quickly grabbed my foot and flung me down the aisle. I slid into another shelf, denting the frame with a groan. I noticed she was coming for me again, so I slid into the next aisle to come face to face with a full-size bouncy castle. She came into the aisle after me with a terrifying look in her dark eyes. Agatha smiled, her head twisting to the side with a crack. "We can talk about this," I said, raising my hands into the air. "No more talking!" Agatha screeched, black spit dripping from her lips like a rabid dog. She appeared before me, tackling me backward into the bouncy castle. I prepared to hit the soft bottom, only for my back to collide with the tiled floor. She straddled me tightly against the tiles, her hands pinning my arms beside my head, as I saw we had somehow made it back into the soup aisle, like we never left at all. Her body creaked above me, cracking and bending before my very eyes. Her clothes transformed into a dark cloak as her face grew more ragged and worn, her dark eyes almost glowing against the pale of her face. My eyes went wide with realization. "You're Shtriga, a witch that drains the life essence of children." "Bingo!" she cackled menacingly. "But I've grown tired of climbing through children's windows at night. I thought I'd have the food come to me, and in short, adults are just more fun to toy with." "You're the one messing with the store, aren't you?" I questioned. "Of course I am. It's a trick I've learned to possess. Each time I teleport someone, I take some energy from that person. Once they tire out to the point of exhaustion, I come to feed directly," she explained. "Well, looks like you got the wrong girl. I'm a vampire, and we don't have souls," I pointed out. "Oh, you do, Mariana. It's not as pronounced as a human's, so your kind doesn't show up in mirrors. But vampires still have one. Your soul," Agatha said, tapping my chest just above my heart. "Your soul is different. You've held on to your humanity. You've killed, but never let yourself truly enjoy the hunt. You didn't want to be a monster, and that makes your soul more delicious than you know," she said, eyeing me up and down. "So, everything you just told me was a lie then? About Arthur and friendship?" I struggled. Agatha shook her head. "No, those tears and that story were true. I do truly believe we can be good friends, Mariana. We can both benefit from this." How the hell can this be beneficial for the both of us? I sneered. You let me feed on you, and I'll get you the blood you crave. Maybe let you snack on me as well, she offered. I won't let you feed on me, I snapped, struggling against her. Damn, stronger than you look. It's because you're weak. I've taken energy from you each time you tried to get back to your precious Kevin. But I'd like more, she cackled. Agatha removed one of her hands from mine to grasp my jaw, forcing my mouth to open. I used my now free hand to grab onto hers, trying my damn hardest to pull it away, but the harder I tried, the weaker my grasp became. Her dark eyes peered into mine as her mouth widened, unlatching like a snake. She leaned down towards my face as the inside of her mouth lit up. I suddenly felt this pulling within my chest, and pain erupting from within. I squeezed her wrist as my eyes went wide at the sight of white mist escaping from my lips to hers. My eyes rolled into the back of my head, my back bending upward into the shape of a bridge. I could feel myself losing breath as if I had to breathe at all. I had been fed on by vampires, succubi, and monsters alike. But this was different. This felt different. Then the pain stopped just as quickly as it began. Her mouth went dark and her hand let go of my chin, placing it upon my wrist. She licked her lips with a moan. You taste better than I ever imagined. Yeah, well, I gasped, swallowing the spit in my throat. You're uglier than I imagined. Back-talking won't get you anywhere. Maybe not, but it'll make me feel better. I laughed beneath my breath. Why are you laughing? She screeched, wrapping her hand around my throat. Because you don't scare me, I spat. Do you want me to train you dry? I laughed again. You're not the first to say that exact same question to me. You aren't scary. I can change that, she muttered, her drool dripping onto my cheek. I met her gaze with confidence. I'd like to see you try, because Kevin will stop at nothing to find me, and when he does, you'll die. Well, I guess I better have another taste before he does. Her hand made it to my face once again as her mouth lit up. I had a confident front, but you could see the fear in my eyes. I felt the pull again as pain erupted throughout my body. Yet this time I smiled, because we were no longer alone. Chapter 4. Kevin. I began to move away from the doors when Connor grabbed my arm with a tight grasp. I looked down at his hand and then back up at his face with a raised brow. There's something you need to know before we go looking for this thing, Connor muttered. I could instantly tell whatever it was, I wasn't going to like it. What didn't you tell me? These bullets will only kill the Shtriga if we catch her in the midst of feeding, Connor explained with a sigh. The Shtriga can't kill Mariana by feeding upon her. It may weaken her, but Mariana will be fine. If you want to get out of here, it's our only option. I didn't like the idea of putting Mariana's life at risk, but I knew he was right. Fine. Where do we start? A loud bang echoed throughout the store. Connor and I looked at one another as we nodded in unison. We ran forward, but a familiar feeling came over me as I stopped short. Connor slowed down beside me with confusion. What's wrong? Connor questioned. I met his confused gaze. I think she knows we're coming. I turned around, and when I turned back, I was surrounded by flowers. Connor nowhere in sight. I walked forward to hear a crunch beneath my shoe, lifting my foot to find broken ceramic pots. I rose up when I heard another loud bang, as if metal was being molded. I ran forward, finding myself in another aisle with a bench shelf beside me. I kneeled down and knew they were close. They had to be. I stood with labored breathing, my strength weakening each time I moved. I slightly turned and ran straight into a bouncy castle, the inflatable material hitting me right in the face. I rubbed my now sore nose when my ears perked up at the sound of muffled talking. I walked forward when I felt a hand grab my arm and pull me backward behind a shelf. The hand rose to my mouth as Connor warned me to be careful. They're in the aisle beside us, Connor whispered. He removed his hand so I could respond. Why did she teleport us around just to have us wind up beside her? Because she wants us to watch. Come on. Connor led the way as we leaned up against the end of the shelf. He peeked around the corner as he motioned me to do the same. I snuck a look to find Shtriga on top of Mariana. Mariana was struggling against her, looking paler than she usually did. I took my gun out and was prepared to shoot. I wanted to make my move, but Connor shook his head as he placed his hand on my chest. "Don't. You have to wait until she feeds or it'll be all for nothing," Connor warned. I reluctantly lowered my gun. Connor and I switched positions so I could peer over the edge of the shelf. I only caught part of Mariana's words. "Kevin will stop at nothing to find me, and when he does, he'll die." She sounded so confident and trusting in me. I knew we wanted to protect one another as we were partners and friends. But that was the first time I heard her say something like that. I smiled to myself before refocusing on the task at hand. The Shtriga laughed. "Well, I guess I better have another taste before he does." Her hand wrapped around Mariana's chin, opening her mouth. I saw the confident front Mariana was putting on and the fear behind her eyes. I've seen her angry, happy, sad, and sarcastic, but I don't think I've ever seen her truly afraid. A white mist began to billow from Mariana's lips into the Shtriga's own mouth. Mariana's body bent upward into the shape of a bridge, pain smothering her features. Her eyes met mine as that fear turned into hope. That simple act made me lose any sort of self-control. My protective instinct kicked in, and I couldn't sit back any longer. I had to take action now. Connor sensed what I was about to do as he frantically shook his head. I knew I should calculate my shot and steady my aim, but watching Mariana writhe in pain affected me more profusely than I ever imagined. I stepped out of our hiding spot and took my shot. The bullet lodged in the Shtriga's shoulder, missing her heart by a good few inches. As the bullet collided with her skin, she screeched at a deafening pitch. Connor and I grabbed at our ears as the Shtriga got up from Mariana and spun around to face me. She reached up to her shoulder and pulled the bullet from her torn flesh, flinging it down at the floor. The bullet clattered against the tile with a ding. Agatha's head tilted to the side with a vicious glare. "You must be Kevin." "The one and only," I spat, pointing my gun at her again. "Now I suggest you step away from my friend, or I'll make you sorry." "You can't kill me that way," she taunted with a shaking head. "It may not kill you, but it'll sting," I muttered, shooting another bullet into her stomach. Agatha looked down at the wound as black blood flowed down her shirt. She looked from it and back to me with fury. She growled beneath her breath with intensity. Her eyes met mine. "My turn." Agatha lunged towards me with all her speed. Connor, with quick thinking, pushed me out of the way as the Shtriga tackled him. I spun around as he started fighting her off. "Go for your friend!" Connor yelled, kicking the Shtriga into the next aisle. I wanted to help Connor, but I saw Mariana lying on the floor and changed my mind. I ran to Mariana's side, helping her to sit up against the shelf. She laid her head near the cans of soup, smiling up at me. "I knew you'd come for me," she whispered. "I will always come for you," I said, grasping her hand in mine. "Are you okay?" "I'm weak, but I'll live." "I'm a badass vampire. No soul-sucking witch could take me down," Mariana smiled. "You are quite badass," I'd agree. We smiled at one another for a short moment before Mariana's smile suddenly faded. She pulled herself into a more comfortable position. Mariana coughed, a low rattling type of cough. If she were human, I'd think she was dying. "Kevin, I want you to know that Mariana began, stuttering a bit. "I don't get close to people. Not anymore, at least. But when I was separated from you, I felt bad." "Bad?" I questioned. "I missed you," she admitted as her emerald eyes met mine with honesty. "I know we've only known each other for a few months, but I genuinely missed you. You're the first human in a very long time that I've actually felt close to. I just wanted to tell you before I chickened out, because I am awful at sharing how I feel." "That you are," I agreed. She smiled slightly with an apology on her lips. "I'm sorry your plans got ruined because of me." "This is not your fault. If anything, it's my fault. I was the one who chose this dumb store. You should be blaming me," I retorted. "Well, then I blame you. What happened to all your great detective skills, Mr. P.I.?" Mariana sarcastically joked with a wide smile. "Christmas clouds my judgment, Miss Vampire Lady," I joked in return. We both laughed aloud as movement caught our attention. Connor was thrown into one of the shelves, picked up by his shirt, and thrown down the aisle. He slid down the tiles on his back. his head landing right beside Mariana's foot. He looked out of breath and sweaty. "We better come up with a plan. She's kicking my ass," Connor gasped. Agatha appeared at the end of the aisle, having Connor's gun in her hand. She looked directly at us as she crushed the gun into a ball of metal, the gun hitting the floor with a clatter. Mariana tried to stand, but her wobbly legs caused her to fall back down, while Connor was trying to regain the strength to lift his head. I knew, in this moment, I was the only one strong enough to defeat the Shtriga, but I honestly had no idea how I was going to do that. I rose to my feet and separated from the group. Mariana watched my movement with concern, but I silently reassured her everything was going to be fine as I returned my attention to Agatha. "Hey, ugly!" I yelled, her gaze meeting mine. "Come and get it!" Agatha screeched as she ran at me. I slid into the next aisle, running as fast as I could. She appeared before me, using her palm to knock me on my ass. I got to my feet and pointed my gun at her. Yet, when I pointed the gun in her direction, she was already gone. I heard her laugh ringing around me like a shadowed beast. I spun around, trying to spot her, but each time I did, she would vanish before I could even pull the trigger. At last, she stopped just long enough for me to get a bullet in her leg. The second it went through her flesh, she appeared before me, knocking my gun from my hand and pinning me up against the shelf. Her hands wrapped around my throat, her nails digging into my flesh. "You're one idiotic human." "I was going to say confident," I retorted, her hand squeezing my throat just a little bit tighter. "You're just as annoying as Mariana is," Agatha sighed. "We're two peas in a pod," I gasped with a smile. "Well, let's see if you taste as good as she did, then." Agatha leaned in close as she forced my mouth to open. My hand shot upward to grasp hers, her mouth lighting up like a Christmas tree. I felt a tugging within my chest, a similar white mist escaping my lips as it had from Mariana's. I now understood why she was in pain, because it was excruciating. I felt my legs weakening beneath Agatha's grasp as my heartbeat quickened. It was almost as if she was pulling the blood from my heart, the breath from my lungs, and the light from my soul. I lost feeling in all my fingertips, my eyes beginning to close. Suddenly, a loud bang filled the air. Agatha fell backward onto the floor as I collapsed, coughing to regain my breath. I turned to find Agatha, dead. I looked from her to where the shot had come from to find Mariana standing in the middle of the aisle, the gun still smoking in her hand. She threw the gun to the ground as she limped over to my side. Mariana offered her hand to me as she pulled me onto my feet. "Are you okay?" "I should be asking you the same thing," I replied. Mariana's gaze lingered as my hand rose to my neck, bringing it back into my line of sight to find blood on my fingertips. Agatha must have cut me when she had me pinned up against the shelf. I re-met Mariana's gaze as she swallowed the spit in her throat. I could see it in her eyes, and when she realized this, she looked away. "I'll be fine once we get the hell out of here," Mariana muttered, avoiding my gaze. I took my shirt and wiped my neck clean. We were both heavily weak, but I had more strength than she did. I offered to help her, but she didn't want to get too close in case something happened. I agreed as we slowly walked away from Agatha together. I noticed Mariana's shuffling feet, but did not intervene. We re-entered the aisle. We left Connor in to find him just beginning to stand. "Is she dead?" Connor asked, holding his arm close to his body, most likely fractured. I quickly nodded as Connor exhaled in relief. He led the way towards the front of the store. The second we stepped outside, the lights within the building went dark. Whether that was a coincidence or due to Agatha's death, I could not be certain. Connor walked with us to the car as I unlocked the door and helped Mariana inside, closing the door behind her. Once she was comfortable, I turned to Connor. "Where are you going to now?" "I'm thinking of taking a vacation or a much-needed nap." "What about you two?" Connor sighed, holding his hand against his bruised ribs. "Just back to work as usual," I said, offering my hand to him. "It was nice to meet you, Connor." He shook my hand in return. "Nice to meet you, Kevin. Let's hope we never meet in this type of circumstance again." Connor waved goodbye as I got in the car to find Mariana with a shocked expression. I turned toward her with confusion. "What's up?" "We were in there for 4 days, Mariana exclaimed, pointing her screen back at me to reveal the date to be December 24th. Christmas Eve. It felt like mere hours, I muttered to myself. Mariana sighed. Yeah, I guess she could do more than drain energy and teleport. I guess so. I started up the car and drove towards town. The entire car ride was silent, and neither of us minded. I think after the 4 days we had, we deserved some peace and quiet. As I drove, I kept peeking over at Mariana to find her face grimaced in pain, her hands shaking profusely. Instead of driving back to my office, I took Mariana home. With a few odd looks in the elevator, we made it to her apartment door, and I helped her onto the couch. Her body eased against the fabric, the pain lessening on her features. Mariana, what can I do to make this better? I pleaded, wanting her pain to cease. Her eyes met mine. Go home. Once I rest for a little while, I'll get myself some blood from the fridge, and I'll be as good as new. Why don't you head home, and maybe we can meet up tomorrow once both of us are in better shape? I'm not going to leave you like this. Let me get the blood for you, please. She nodded slightly as I shot to my feet. I made my way into the kitchen, grabbing a blood bag from the door of the fridge. I cut the bag open with the scissors beside me and poured the red nectar into one of her favorite mugs. I popped it into the microwave to return some of its warmth and brought it to Mariana. She pulled herself into a sitting position as she took a long sip. Her eyes rolled into the back of her head as pleasure smothered her features. I could still not get used to the fact Mariana drank blood and enjoyed it like wine. I would ask her about what it was like on another day, as my focus right now was her health. When she had downed the entire mug, she allowed me to help her to bed. I tucked her in and made sure she was as comfortable as she could be. Good night, Mariana, I whispered with a smile. Good night, Kevin. Mariana snuggled up against her pillow as I let myself out of her bedroom. I was tired and weak, ready to collapse and take a long winter's nap. But I had a mission. There were only a few hours left until Christmas Day, and I wasn't going to waste them. Mariana. After Kevin left, I fell asleep almost instantly. I slept for only a few hours when I was awoken by a jingling coming from my living room. I thought an intruder may have broken in, so I prepared for a fight. I tiptoed into the living room, a knife in hand, as I still wasn't at full strength to fight anyone off. Yet, when I saw what had become of my apartment, I dropped the knife with a smile. The entire place was decorated in string lights of every color. A tree stood tall in the corner, covered in lights, garland, and beautiful ornaments. A wreath on my door, and my fireplace going strong. It was a Christmas wonderland, with Kevin standing in the middle, a Santa hat haphazardly placed upon his head. What's all this? I asked with awe. Well, I still wanted to give you a proper Christmas. I went out to a store that was still open and picked all this up. I even got you something special, Kevin said, offering a small wrap box to me. I took the box from him with guilt on my face. I didn't have time to get you anything. That's okay. You'll just have to make it up to me next Christmas. Now open it, Kevin smiled. I looked down at the red and green box. I could see Kevin's sprawled out handwriting on the tag with a smiley face next to my name. I undid the beautiful golden bow and removed the top of the box. Inside was a snow globe of a small forest. I removed it from the box to get a closer look to find a small clearing and 2 little people laying in the snow. I shook the globe as sparkly flakes fell down among the trees. I know you like the snow, and so I made sure you never have to stop enjoying its beauty, Kevin smiled. I looked down at it as tears came to my eyes. Thank you. I set the snow globe on the coffee table and hugged him tightly. Kevin wrapped his arms around me and made me feel safe. I knew he was only human, but I didn't care, because this meant more to me than he could ever imagine. When we finally separated, Kevin pulled another Santa hat from the couch and placed it upon my head. I pulled it over my ears with a genuine smile. There's something else I'd like to do to celebrate, Kevin said as he dug around in his pocket and pulled out a small plant. You can't say no to mistletoe. He lifted it above our heads as I laughed. This was so cheesy, and I loved every second of it. Before he could say anything else, I leaned forward and gave him a kiss. His eyes went wide with shock, but soon turned into joy. I pulled back just as the grandfather clock rang throughout the apartment. I looked up at Kevin with a smile. Merry Christmas, Kevin. Kevin looked out at me with the same type of smile. Merry Christmas, Mariana. The end.